Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm Chris and this is Fully Defined. Over the years, I've helped thousands of students streamline their SolidWorks workflow, and I want to help you do the same. In this final part of the Features Essentials series, we're covering one of the biggest time savers in CAD, patterns. You'll learn how to create circular patterns, both from sketches and features, and the same for linear patterns, also using sketches and features. And to finish off, we'll even cover the fill pattern tool. If you've ever needed to repeat features precisely across a model, this video is for you. These lessons you're about to see are taken from my full SolidWorks for Designers course on Udemy, where I go deeper into the tools and provide project files to follow along. If you want to learn faster with additional content, practice files, and support, check out the full Udemy course linked below. All right, hey guys, it's time to talk about linear, circular, and fill patterns. Now those are feature types, but linear and circular patterns also exist in sketch tools. So I'm going to have to show you those two sketch tools first, so you have an understanding of what can be done inside a sketch, and then we'll focus on using those as feature tools. So I'm going to ask you to recreate the sketch that I'm about to do. I want you to start on the right plane, and I want you to create two circles, one at the bottom with a diameter of 76 and one at the top with a diameter of 30. I want you to make this top circle the center point vertical from the origin so that it stays straight in line with the one at the bottom, and then add a dimension between the two circles of 76. So we're going to grab the line tool, and you're going to sketch a tangent line from one to the other. You know, it's very important when you're doing this. The error most students get into, or the trap that they fall into, is instead of starting the tangent line somewhere on the arc here, they start it where these points are and then go point to point. They say, well, that looks good, that's fully defined, but it's not the design intent that we're after, because here, this line, well, it's cutting through the circle and it's hitting at a sharp point, which is horizontal to the origin. It's not what we want. And the same thing at the top. It's not a tangent or a smooth line going in. Whereas on the left, you can see this line, tangent and smooth with that circle. So we have to delete that horizontal relation, select the line and the circle, and then make them tangent. Do the same at the top and the bottom. Line, circle, tangent. And we're going to do trim. So power trim away the inside sections. So we're just left with the outside shape. And then you're going to draw two more holes, small holes, on the center points of those circles. And both of those holes are going to be 10 millimeters in diameter. So you can dimension one and make the other one equal. All right. And then you're ready for what I'm about to show you. We're actually going to look at circular pattern first. So how it works is, if I have a circle like this, and let's give it a diameter of 8, and let's make it fully defined. I'm going to make it vertical to the origin, and I'm going to give it a distance from the origin of 20 millimeters. Now, in this example, my design intent is to create a pattern of that hole that goes around that center point circle. So the way to do that in a sketch is to go up the top here, drop down arrow, circular sketch pattern, and this opens this property manager where I'm going to select my axis, my rotation point as the origin, point 2. And my entities to pattern, it's just this circle at the bottom. And then we can see the preview. And the preview default is 360 degrees spacing, equal spacing with four instances. Now, you can change the number of instances. In fact, in the sketch, you can do any number. It doesn't matter if they're overlapping or anything like that. It's fine. Our intent is to do 5. Now, there are some other options in this tool, but the CSWA fundamentals does not call for expert knowledge of sketch features and linear patterns, of sketch circular patterns and linear patterns. So I'm just going to cover the basics. You get to control whether there's a dimension radius, whether there's equal spacing, the number of instances, and you can do instances to skip as well. So let's say I wanted to do a pattern of 5, but I actually wanted to skip the top 2. Well, I could click those 2 there and turn them off. So it's only going to create the bottom 3. As it stands, this is exactly what I want to create. Now, if I did dimension radius, it's just going to add another dimension, like the 20 millimeter one here. So we don't need to tick that box. When I click OK, it's created the pattern, and you can see this icon here is the pattern relation marker. And when I select it, you can see all items linked to that pattern. They are underdefined. To fully define it, I'm just going to click and drag one of those so that I can see this center point. I'm going to drag that center point back to the origin. And once it's snapped on there with a coincident relation, it's now fully defined. That's actually all we want to create for this feature. So I'm going to extrude it 2 millimeters. And while we've got it here, I'm going to save. This part is P03. All right, so that is how you use a circular pattern in a sketch. All right, so that is how you use a circular pattern in a sketch. Let's look at something a little bit different and show you a circular pattern in a feature. To do that, I'm just going back into this sketch, and I'm going to delete the pattern that we created and delete these couple of circles. And I'm actually going to delete the first one as well, so that our first feature is just this boss extrude. And this is a key difference. If I was to try and pattern the entire boss extrude with those holes, it's actually going to pattern the entire thing, not just the hole at the bottom, but this hole at the top, this hole in the middle, this whole shape. Create multiple patterns of those. It's not my intent. If I want to use a circular feature pattern, I have to make it its own feature before I can use the pattern tool, which means I have to have a sketch here for a hole. I have to do an extruded cut, say through all. Now that that is its own feature, and that feature is just a cut at that hole, I can select that cut feature. I can go on my features toolbar, under linear pattern, select circular pattern. For my axis rotation point, I can select this circular face, and then I have similar options. I have instances to skip. I'm using this feature. I'm using 360 degrees and five instances, and I press OK. And we have the same result visually as what we did earlier, but the intent and the method is slightly different. Now, this is a really simple part, so it doesn't really matter one way or the other which method you use. The tricky thing to understand, and that you only get from experience, is when you need to use a circular pattern feature or when you need to use it in the sketch. Generally, you'd always use it in the sketch if it's simple geometry and if it's easy enough to see. You don't want to make your sketch too complicated. If the shape that you're patterning has, let's say, a lot of curves and cuts or shapes to it, and it's not just a circle, maybe it's better in a feature pattern. Also, the feature pattern has a few more parameters that you can select and change. The feature pattern does not necessarily need to be a cut extrude feature. You can actually pattern like a face or a body or a surface as well, and that's what makes it a little bit different to the sketch option. So either way, let's save this, and let's have a look now at linear pattern features. All right, so for linear pattern features, I want you to go to point P05 that we've created before. Now, just like with circular patterns, and being a circular sketch pattern option, there's also a linear sketch pattern option. So I've just started a sketch, and I'm just going to create a circle here and make it 5 millimeters in diameter. And now I'm going to use linear sketch pattern. Now, when you select linear sketch pattern, you have generally 2 default options selected, and that is the x-axis and the y-axis. Now, it's x and y because when you're in a sketch, you've only got the 2 dimensions or 2 angles to go along. You can deselect those options and change to another angle if you've got something that is going not x and y, but it's going somewhere in between. You can do that. I'm not going to do that in this example. What I am going to do is select entities to pattern and select this little circle, and I'm going to increase the dimensions to 20. I'm going to increase the instances to 4. And now you can see the yellow preview, what's happening here is along the x-axis, which is side to side, at 20 millimeter increments, 5 increments, or 5 instances of those, I'm getting a replica of my sketch that I've selected as entities to pattern. Let's press OK. Tick dimension spacing and press OK, and you can see the results. Now, I'm going to draw a line here, and I'm going to show you how you can edit the sketch pattern. Normally, it's not that easy to get into. So if I click here, see, it just goes back into the relations tool. Even double clicking on this number is just the number of instances. So I can change the number of instances, easy enough. Click on that, not easy. The way to edit a sketch pattern is to right click on one of the items that has been patterned and click edit linear pattern. It'll take you back in, and it's here where I can add or remove entities to the pattern, such as this line. Press OK, and now that line has been patterned as well. Right, now, what my intent is to actually put a number of circles along this shape here. So this pattern actually hasn't quite worked out in the way that I'd want. Let's go back. I'll put that dimension back on, and I'm going to select that circle again, click it, linear sketch pattern, but I want to go at the y-axis, so I'm going to change that number of instances to 2 and reduce the x to 1. Then I'm going to increase the distance, and I'm going to increase the instances. Okay, now this has worked perfectly because, well, when I say work perfectly, the fifth instance is at the exact center point of this circle at the top, because my length from these two circles is 80 millimeters. And with 5 instances at 20 millimeter spacings, that means I've got 4 lengths. 4 times 20 is 80. Let's change that number to 15. And now my design intent is to have equal spacing of these. Let's suggest that I don't actually know what the number is, or I want to make it even parametric. I want to make it so that if I change the length of this arm, this reinforcing plane, that no matter how long or short I make it, I'm going to have the same number of holes, creating a pattern. So what I'm going to do, I leave 15 millimeters there as the dimension, but I'm not checking this box for dimensioning it. What that means is I get the pattern, but I can click it and I can drag it up and down, and I can drag it to this center point here, and then it's fully defined. And then if I accept that sketch and I go to this feature and I change this size to 60, you can see the pattern reduces. And if I use that pattern as an extruded cut, right, and I change the length of this to 120, I'm still going to have 3 holes equally spaced in that part. It's pretty cool, right? So that is how a linear sketch pattern works. Now we actually don't need it this part at all. It's fine. I do want to show you now, though, the linear pattern feature, how that works. Now it does give you a preview there. It patterns features, faces, and bodies in 1 or 2 linear directions. You can select reference geometry to define the pattern. You can also skip instances. There's a lot of things you can do with pattern. I think one of the best ways to learn this tool is to actually go through the SolidWorks tutorial on it, which I will have in this course, a recording that I've done taking you through that process and that tutorial. A linear pattern itself, the feature is great for creating things like grips or grills or holes or series of features that are replications of one another. There's this project I did recently on YouTube, and I'll just bring up the file, and here's what I'm talking about now. This geometry could have been created in any number of ways. It's an example of potential for linear pattern. In the end, though, I did it, I think, with a sketch pattern, as you can see here. If we have a look at the sketch, I had a shape, I had a circle, and I ended up doing a linear pattern for that circle to create the geometry that I then used for in the end, a revolves, okay, because I created the solid body. I was using contours as well. Okay. But if somebody else was recreating the same shape, they could have very easily done this with a circular extrude one way, and then a simple cut to do one of these with some fillets, and then done a linear pattern along an edge. What I'm talking about is this example here. So let's take this edge here. I'm going to convert it. I'm going to do an extruded cut. I'm going to do a thin feature. I'm going to go one direction in. I'm going to make it very small. I'm going to make my distance very small. I'm going to offset it from the end. Is this going to work? We will see. All right, there's my cut. Now I can do a linear pattern feature going in this direction, and the feature itself is this cut, and I want to do spacing and instances, and every 3 millimeters, every 1.5 millimeters, I want to do an instance, so I do 5. Very similar detail, very similar process. It comes down to design intent. How are you going to, what's your end result? What are you aiming to get? There's multiple ways of doing everything. So what's easiest? Sometimes it's the linear pattern, sometimes it's a sketch. We can just as easily pattern this whole body. So let's say that I'm doing a linear pattern. I'm using the right plane as a reference. And instead of a feature, I'm going to select the whole body, because let's just say maybe this kind of look is what I'm trying to achieve. I don't know. They worked. They combined.
Okay.
All right. So that's one solid body now. In that example, I linear patterned a solid body feature. So it's basically copying the whole thing, not just one element of it. So that's linear pattern, one of the most powerful tools for creating very clear geometry differences in an object quickly. Anywhere where detail or shapes or bodies are replicating, use the linear feature tool. And that's a wrap on patterning. Nice job sticking through it. These tools are super powerful once you learn how to control them, especially in complex models and assemblies. If you want to see how these apply to real-world workflows, check out the full Udemy course, links in the description. Otherwise, hit like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks. Hey, thanks for watching the video all the way to the end. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. If you've got any suggestions for other content, leave it in the comments below. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and there's some other videos here. Check out. Thanks.